With Bucky discard, the best deck in the format, and almost 75% of the previous week's set champions, I had two main thoughts when I was trying to pivot away from playing Bucky myself. Well, I recognized the deck's strengths, and I actually played it for quite a while. I can't stand the luck and the reliance on having to have Bucky on turn 2, as well as just the general horrible gameplay results when the deck is functioning. I played this deck for a good chunk of Season 4, and including last week's set champions, where I faced like 60% of my matches were the mirror, and all of them were miserable, win or lose. So this week, I wanted to, and I needed to do something very, very different. So at Leagues, I had been playing Amethyst Steel with Jafar to some moderate success, and you can see those some of those games on my channel if you check those out. And it was a lot of fun, but it was pretty inconsistent, and it had a really high uninkable count, especially when you get some whole new worlds that are just difficult to play. If you can't play them, you can't ink them. It's just tough. There's a lot of uninkables. So basically, I just took the kind of core of the deck and I started taking out the Jafar pieces and thinking about what I wanted to put in. And basically, I came up with this kind of idea that came from Flux, if anything, and it's draw 2, play 2. So I wanted to try and fight the Bucky decks, but I also thought that in response to the Bucky decks, there would be more slower blue decks like Ruby Sapphire and Steel Sapphire. So I wanted to be relatively low to the ground, but have the principle of like every card draws a card. So these combine for the draw 2, play 2 idea, because if I'm able to draw multiple cards in the turn and everything is relatively low cost, I can keep deploying threats while racking up tons of early lore. I make them answer me while being able to refuel just about every turn. So against blue decks or anything not attacking my hand, I can just keep the extra threats in my hand and play around board wipes or making them waste their removal on me every turn. So with this in mind, there are 26 cards. 26 cards that draw a card in this deck. Or that could at least draw one card, and that is about 43% of the deck. A little more than 43% of the deck can draw a card, and another 12 cards could draw, or another 12 are able to draw 2 or more. So although I found that Chernobog's followers and Magic Broom rarely drew any cards, they were often more valuable as just questing, but Broom's ability did come very handy a few key moments, including in the finals, allowing me to draw extra cards and ink to play a fox and bounce, and it's all great stuff. But for the most part, I wanted to keep my hand as full as possible and make sure that the top of my deck was either card draws or threats, or both, ideally. This leads to our next pile, our threats. So threats take the form of cheap 2-lore questers. Smee was very good. Basically, I want things that are kind of like mildly annoying on their own, but like not enough to justify wasting a removal spell on. So when they all combine, they get a genuinely fast clock. In fact, one of my games, I was at 11 lore by turn 4 and 19 by turn 5. But I didn't want fragile threats, so I don't have the little Maleficent in here because I want them to stand up to small attacks or make them spend more resources to remove them. So in PUA's case, he kept coming back over and over and over again, and he was an absolute house, absolute MVP all day. I regret not running 4 of him. I could easily cut 2 Cuscos for 4 of these. And I love it. The fact that he shuffles back in and you're drawing so many cards means the likelihood of seeing multiples, if he is banished, is very high. I added Arthur as kind of like a last minute add. He was really good. He did 2 big things. He did his jobs of gaining lore, but he also kind of drew removal away from other things so that like my goats would survive, or even my little lore guys over here would survive, and getting a bunch of lore. Then we round up with Benja doing double duty as both removal for items as well as being able to quest for 2. And then of course the goat. No introduction needed. Gains lore when he comes in, gains lore when he leaves. He's a big annoying threat. And when you're dealing with, putting 10, 12, 14 lore on the board in the first couple turns, then goats off the top become extremely potent, and they won me at least one of my games off the top at the very end, and did a lot of work all day. Alright, this section is kind of like the combat and utility pile. So this combat and utility pile does exactly what you say, combat and utility. Hook did a bunch of work taking care of applying early pressure. He's also a 1-drop, so just so I have another 1-drop to play. He can quest a bunch, but he also does a great job teaming up with Crab to take care of locations. Both of these guys teamed up to take out several coves during the day. We've of course got Snake and Fox. I had to make cuts somewhere, so I cut a Snake. I'm never playing this on 2. I'm only playing it later in the game to bounce my resources. If I'm on turn 2, I definitely want a PUA or a Smee or pretty much anything else that can present an additional threat without taking a threat off the board. And then Fox again does a great job taking care of locations. If I do need to attack, it does a great job there. Last but not least is our targeted removal section. This was really straightforward to me. I wanted my removal to be basically 2 things. I wanted them to be cheap, and I wanted them to not be songs, because I don't want Ursula to take them. I need to banish little things early, and hope that the game doesn't go long enough in order to need to get anything bigger than that. My top priorities to banish were effectively Diablo, Flynn, and Ursula. These 3 pose huge threats to this deck specifically, and each of them are really annoying to deal with, and I have to take care of them early. Diablo draws cards when I draw cards. I am drawing a ton of cards, so if a Diablo lives, he's drawing a lot of cards too. Flynn can genuinely race me and gain lore at a rate that's as good as mine, and since all of my creatures except Fox and Goat are really small, the likelihood that they're going to have a bigger threat on the board with more strength is very high. A lot of my creatures are very small, and so he poses a genuine threat to race me when I'm trying to race myself. So Flynn is the next highest priority, and the last highest priority was Ursula, because she can double sing things. She's taking out my stuff, and if she takes out all of my stuff every single turn with a double song while they're drawing cards, if it's Storm Rage on, that's a big problem for me. So these 3 were the priority when I was thinking of these. As well as 2 of them being inkable, which is really nice. Otherwise, I'd probably run 4 cannons. But them being ink means that in the blue matchups where I don't necessarily need these, they can go straight into the inkwell and I can keep deploying my threats. So that was my thought process between this. Also, because none of these are songs, none of them can be taken by the 2-drop Ursula. Big help. Overall, I had an up and down Swiss portion, started with a buy, and then I 2-0'd Ruby Sapphire. Very clean aggro start. He stumbled on some ink, not much else to talk about. My deck was doing its job, and he was a little bit slow, a little stuck on ink for one of the games, and it was not particularly close. Round 3 was against Ruby Amethyst in 2 incredibly tight back and forth games that could have easily been decided either way. My win was thanks to a timely goat off the top when I was at 19, and my loss was in bricking against his castles while I was stalled out at 17. But it was rewarding as he was the only other undefeated player, and we went into the next round still in the 2 top seeds. However, my next round was a crushing loss to Green Steel. Both of the games I had 0 1-drops for early pressure, despite aggressive mulliganing and huge redundancy in the deck in general. Plus, he had turn 2 Bucky both games, and it was rough. It was pretty rough to come back from. I had an opportunity to take out an Ursula. It would required me to both cannons and Baboom. I didn't really want to have to waste 2 cards against a Diablo deck, but I should have, because that was able to then banish 2 of my things, which set me back immensely, and then I had to waste 2 of them on it anyway, and it was just a bad time. The last round of Swiss, I went from top seed to, oh my god, I need to just 1-1 in order to make top 8. I only needed to win 1 game to guarantee the top spot, but he took game 1. Caught me off guard. It was a little stressful, and I was very worried that I was going to go from top seed to not even making top 8, but we had a very, very tight game 2. I managed to squeak out that win. We got 1-1. His tiebreakers were good enough to get him in, so not enough people below 2-0'd, and we both made the top 8. So, first round of the top 8, and I am excited because I am paired with another Ruby Sapphire. Exactly what I wanted to be, because I wanted to go under them, aggro them out, and gain as much lore as I can before they even get off the ground. I'm the higher seed, 5 versus 4, so I get to go first. This is the game where I had an absolute nut draw. I had turn 1 Broom, I had turn 2 PUA, I had turn 3 another PUA, and a Chernobog's Followers, into turn 4 Castle. It was an insane start. It was not remotely close, and in about 6 minutes I had game 1. In game 2, it wasn't quite as fast, but still pretty decisive. The deck's speed in both lore and card velocity helps a lot. So a clean 2-0, secured my Ursula, got it from that round, and now we're off to the semifinals. In the semifinals, I get paired up with the same Amber Emerald player that I played earlier, this time with a little better knowledge in hand, a little more aware of his songs and his muses and all those types of things. I was able to kind of better identify the threats, make sure that if he does tap anything down to strategically attack in, what do I need to target? They were both really, really tight games, really close games, but I was able to win them both in a nice squeaked out 2-0 victory without any need for a third game. And with that, it was off to it. I'd won a playmat, and I look over to the table next to me where the other two semifinalists are playing, and it is a Ruby Sapphire mirror. So my eyes light up because I am delighted to play against either one of them. So in the finals, I play the third different Ruby Sapphire player, and he is very good. He gave me a very huge sweat. I was on the play as the 4th seed versus the 7th seed, which gave me a huge advantage game 1. It was fairly quick and decisive, which boosted my confidence, but game 2 was stressful. It was a lot clunkier of a start, and I kept a very greedy hand, probably the wrong choice. It was 5 1-drops, and I think a Maleficent and a Friends, and I just ran out of gas. It wasn't enough. The multiple 1-drop threats are not nearly as potent as any of the 2-drop threats, and he's able to challenge in, get rid of my stuff, and I just kind of run out of gas. He's able to overwhelm me in a game that I thought was going to be pretty easy, and it was a kick in the pants, a real shock to have lost that. But that's what Ruby Sapphire does. If the game goes long enough, it's just going to present answer after answer and big threat after big threat. So off to game 3 we go. Back on the play, I have another smooth opening, 1-drop, 2-drop, 1 and 2-drop, then castle, the beautiful, wonderful start. I don't think they were exactly these, but very, very similar. He had some good answers, including a timely Hercules to take out my castle. Bought him a little bit more time than I was comfortable with, but I was able to get the final play by bouncing with my fox, bouncing a goat, and goat got it done. I was able to save my goat from being removed by bouncing him back, playing him again, which put me to 19, and at that point he had to win on the following turn. He wasn't able to, and I had it. I wanted to make this because, well, I like to think of myself as a pretty good player. I'm absolutely not in the top with the greats. I have 2 little kids and a busy job, and this is my hobby, and while I take my hobbies pretty seriously, I just don't have the time like I used to when I played Magic. Dedicated to learning every nuance of every play line against every deck. I just can't do that anymore. And so I'm really proud that I was able to do this here. And yes, I was able to capitalize on some good luck, both with a bye early on and a bunch of favorable matchups, but I was able to convert those into wins. I was able to convert those into points. I also played against a lot of very skilled players. San Diego has a really competitive scene, and it definitely has helped me become a better player. But also, the DLC in Dallas this past weekend saw exactly 0 Amethyst Steel decks making day 2. So seeing that Sunday morning as I was handing over my deck list to the store, I was a little worried, but I sat back on my years of experience in other games, my translated knowledge here in Lorcana, and converted my good fortune into an Ursula and a champion playmat. And for that, I am very thankful. Here's to the next one.